And the president, in fact, triggered that whole conversation this week, bringing back the issue of ECG privatization. Let's listen to what the president said.
Ghana and South Africa were the first to begin the deregulation on this African continent. And change was not something people wanted to embrace. They said that telecoms was such a vital service that if you deregulated and let the private sector come in, the CIA could plan things and listen to conversations. And those were some of the chimeras that were, pulled out of the box because we were going to privatize, allow private participation. Today I can see a similar development. We have a very inefficient downstream distribution system on the electricity and power front. We're trying to do reforms, and those chimeras are being drawn out. Electricity is so important, that it must be monopolized by the state. Why are you allowing private sector in? But we've had this system for years. It's not working. If it's not working, you fix it. And you fix it by taking risks. It's a risk we took when we deregulated telecommunications. Nobody knew it would turn out like this. But look at us many years on. And so if you're not willing to take risks, then the world does not make progress.
Well, guess what happened after that? The workers of ECG, of course, went public criticizing the president for making those comments and justifying why ECG, well, I'm starting to use the word privatization because it's a contested one. Government prefers to use the word concessionaire. Civil society said, listen, you're just playing semantics. What it is you're going to privatize it. I want to bring you in here. I had civil society issue a statement this week on the back of this. And he accused the president of confusing two things, privatization and liberalization. That the comparisons he was drawing there went more to liberalizing the telecom sector and not necessarily privatizing it. And that what they intend to do with ECG is downright privatization and not, liberalization. Where do you stand on this whole debate and from what the president said?
Well, very interesting. Privatization, liberalization. Well, there's a fine line of extension if you focus carefully. We could have left GT on its own, standing on its own, as state-owned, and still liberalize that telecommunications industry by allowing private sector. Like at one stage it was space phone, let's say Mobitel, Celltel, came in around 92, 93, 94. That was liberalizing without necessarily privatizing GT.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line of extension. Eventually, we thought that for GT to become more competitive and deal with the challenges that the private sector involvement had brought about, GT itself needed to be partially privatized. As we speak, GT is 30% government owned. Is it not? State owned, more appropriately, and 70% foreign. So yes, the field is more liberalized. So I think I'm trying to draw that fine line. But you can privatize. If privatize a state-owned industry, either 100% or by offloading some shares to private sector. With this ECG, if you should focus, I've been reading some of the MCC documentation, and I'm not sure. You see, there was a period when government itself was not too forthcoming as to the mode of privatization that it was seeking. Was it that we're going to offload shares to a private company, whether local or foreign or both combined? Or was it, if you read this document, they tell you, see, they had this, they said, no matter which PSP, that's private sector participation option is selected for ECG or NETCO, the Northern one, it must meet certain basic requirements. The main requirements can be summarized as follows. The existing assets of ECG and NETCO must remain in government ownership. The selected private partner must have proven technical and financial capacity and a proven track record of turning around utilities. In the case of a partial privatization, a concession of a lease, the private partner that owns the SPV, I'm sure is special purpose vehicle, or buy shares in ECG should include credible local business partners, pension funds, local banks, employees, a government shareholding to allow for a potential public listing. Local participation must be promoted at operational level, especially through the use of small and medium enterprises to provide goods and services. There's something missing relative to government communication, even as at now, a certain exactitude as to what they are adopting. If it's concession of lease, yeah, but even if you go further and read, concession of lease here in this MCC documentation still indicates a certain private participation. Yes, so there's a partial privatization. Concession.
That's an important point. Is it that now there is the document, the contract, makes room for partial privatization?
It's not a contract, it's only a...
No, these are the due diligence, PSA option study in Ghana's distribution sector.
So it makes room for partial and full privatization. Is that what it is?
No, it doesn't mention full. It says partial privatization, a concession of lease. And I'm saying, let me be honest, I'm not technically competent in dealing with these issues. But the impression I get is that they are not exactly dissimilar.
Okay.
It is like the same thing different. I don't know.
Just to back that,
on the
FCC website, it says the project aims to improve the governance and management of this Ghanaian electricity distribution utility by bringing in a private sector operator and making infrastructure and foundational investments designed to reduce losses and improve service quality.
Yes, so which areas, now we must proceed to ask which areas of this ECG structure that the private sector participation will be targeting at. Is it the distribution? Is it the revenue? Is it this? I have no full complement of what is going on. Perhaps if we had started with our brother Felix, he might have been able to tell us what government is really doing, then we would have interrogated. Okay. But you chose to deal with me, no problems. I'm only asking. I'm now asking questions.
No, of course. Let's give you the answers.
Let's start from the very
answers
top.
For that.
Let's start from the very top. The president expressed government's intention to inject private sector participation with a view to turning around ECG. Because I think all of us will agree around this thing, and perhaps all those watching would agree that there is some inefficiency in the operations of ECG. They have not performed to our expectation as a country. There are simply too many losses that they incur, and their service delivery has, quite frankly, not been up to scratch. So something ought to be done. Now, the question then arose as to what needed to be done. Now, government believes that there is a need for private sector participation. But let me put it on record that government is not selling ECG as in the same breath as what happened to Ghana Telecom. Government is not selling ECG, and I think the president has been very clear from the first day that we are not selling this ECG. Like the document stated, the assets will still remain property of the government of Ghana on behalf of the people of Ghana. So that is the point. Now we are adopting a concession mode. Indeed, I'm sure you've read reports that about 30 or so prospective concessionaires have applied to take over aspects of GCB. Sorry, I beg your pardon, ECG. As to the specific areas that will go into private management, that will be made clearer as and when the process is going. But mind you, whichever concessionaire is selected would have to go through the process of a contract. The government is going to have to establish clearly what the parameters of the engagement are. And so that will become clearer as we go forward. Now, the concessionaire is expected to bring on board some expertise, technical, financial, in order to run the operations of the ECG for a stated period. I think 25 years is the amount of period that we are talking about, with the view to turning it around and meeting the expectations of the public. That is essentially what is happening. The president only used the analogy of the telecoms industry to show what can happen if you open the system up for private sector participation. As for the issue of liberalization, I don't think that, and let me make it clear that I am not speaking to government policy on this particular point that I'm about to make, so that somebody doesn't say that is what government intends to do. We do know that there are jurisdictions where there's more than one distributor or downstream operator. So even the talk of liberalization may not be far-fetched. It should be entirely possible for us to get to a point in this country where there are multiple downstream sector operators. In other words, there are multiple ECGs, for want of a better expression. So the idea of liberalization itself is not out of place. But in this instance, we are talking of private sector participation in an existing state monopoly, which is the Electricity Company of Ghana. And I think the justification for that is clear. It is beyond debate at this point. As for the workers of the ECG, it is not surprising that they would express misgivings. Of course, I would be concerned myself if I heard that an organization that had been part of all this while is going to go into private hands. Uncertainty can arise as to whether or not my job will be guaranteed. And government is engaging in discussions that would ensure that people are not adversely affected. But as to the decision to privatize ECG, I think that the workers of ECG must appreciate that that belongs to somebody else and it is not their call. They can express grievances. Indeed, I'm aware of several engagements.
But they are stakeholders.
I agree.
So you need to necessarily
I think
get their buy-in.
I agree, but every stakeholder has his role. I'm sure you would agree.
I get that.
Absolutely.
Because if you decide not to go along with you, you're going to have challenges.
Well, I don't think that we can run a country like that. That somebody can decide that policy that has been enacted will not be seen through because I disagree with it. I think that the authority to do that lies elsewhere. But the point I'm making is that there has been an engagement process. There has been constant engagement with the workers of ECG with a view to giving them the necessary assurances that they are not going to be adversely affected to the extent that you do your work and it is satisfactory.
They dispute that because the last time we spoke to the Deputy Power Minister, he says in the arrangement is that whoever comes in as a concessionaire cannot sort of sack workers within the period of 5 years. The workers' point is what happens after 5 years.
Well, the point is that
so there's not a moratorium.
You are going to
on getting people out within 5 years.
It is not
after 5 years. What happens? It
is not a comfortable discussion to have. But again, we need to put the interest of the nation ahead of individual interest. What is best for the nation? If a private sector participant comes in and does an assessment and realizes that ECG as an organization can function with a certain core staff and achieve the sort of efficiency and delivery that we expect as members of the public, should we be opposed to that particular move because 1 or 2 or 3 people may lose their jobs? I'm not saying that that is what is going to happen, but I'm opening the discussion up for debate.
But that might happen eventually.
Yes, but again, but you see, when Ghana
Telecom can see a private sector guy coming in and not letting workers go.
When Ghana Telecom was privatized, people lost their jobs.
True.
There was some severance package. Which ensured that they settled. But ultimately, what has become of that company? Are they performing better now than they were doing in the past? And are we benefiting as a people from that transaction? So yes, they have genuine cause to be concerned about their own welfare. But I think the discussion goes beyond that. Like I said, there's an engagement process that would iron out all these grievances that may exist. But in terms of the propriety of the decision to invite private sector participation, I'm yet to hear any argument that cogently undermines it.
The alternative, the option that you're putting for the workers is instead of doing this privatization, float ECG shares on the stock exchange and allow Ghanaians to buy, because they say ECG needs in excess of $300 million of assault or something like that. Yeah, to turn it around. So when you float it, you get the money, and then you can do the things you want to do.
But if you get the money and you still have the same management practices that have led to a bogging down with ECG, the same problem will occur.
Give the guys you appoint to head the ECG performance contracts. You heard that?
Yes.
Give them that, so that when they don't perform to that, you let them go.
So what if as part of the things that they need to do to turn around the company, they need to, as it were, let a number of people go? Would the workers accept that kind of proposal?
No, but once it's objective, you targets, you fail to meet the target, of course, you have to go.
Like the president said, ECG has existed for some time, and various models have been tried. In fact, it is not the first time that there will be some form of private sector participation. I recall that either in the late 80s or mid-90s, there was some French involvement in the management of ECG. We've tried it with Ghana Water before and all that. So these things have been done over the years. But let us try something dramatically different.
I'm not sure about ECG. Maybe that one, some procurement matter. The French company.
Yes. Some aspect of they were basically engaged with ECG on a number of operational and managerial
procurement
issues. Yeah. But the point I'm making is that let us try something different that will give us the sort of results that we desire. But in doing so, government is not going to be capricious. We will not be insensitive to the plight of ECG workers. That is why the engagement is going on, to find out what is best for all parties. But as for the decision to.
It's a done deal, isn't it? It's a done deal.
Well, it is something that government has decided to do.
Yeah,
for want
so
of
it's
better
done.
expression. So
They've explained the concession thing here.
Yeah.
I'm reading it, not that I understand it.
okay, all right. You mean the Millennium Beyond people?
Concessionaire typically creates a new special purpose vehicle to operate the business of the utility. The concessionaire operates the distribution business and maintains current and future assets granted under a concession contract. ECG retains ownership of the existing assets, note that. Although in some circumstances it may be desirable to establish new asset owning company. New assets can be owned by the special purpose vehicle or ECG, but in either case they revert to the ECD at the end of the concession period, with or without a termination payment. In the case where a termination payment is made, it typically equals the undepreciated value of the assets at that date of termination. Mantias here, but my reading.
Like I said, well, there's a lawyer here.
Fortunately, he would help
like
us.
I said,
Kofi, can you help us?
we are having a before he comes to the
Okay, sure.
At least from the perspective of government,
No problem.
a concessionaire will be selected to take over the operations of ECG. But that arrangement will be guided by a contract in which specific terms will be
Stated.
stated. That will be a public document, I believe. And so there should
I
no
hope so.
dispute at all about exactly what they can do or cannot do. But what is certain is that it is not going to be sold. It's not being turned over to a private entity to as it were own permanently or for any extended period of time. That is the point I wanted to establish. Yes.
Okay. Kofi?
Well,
I'll come to you.
well, in terms of the special purpose vehicle, I guess that's probably the only technical thing there which others may not have heard of. A special purpose vehicle is a legal entity that often is specially set up, and that's the special part, specially set up with a specific focus to undertake an assignment, and often is dissolved after the assignment is done. So normally it's a legal entity that is usually established by investing parties. So parties are about to enter into a particular investment arrangement, and then they'll say, let's set up a legal entity. So it's a company for all practical purposes. It's a company, but it is specially designed for a purpose. Sometimes it is set up just to have funds in, an investment funds, put in, or assets put in for a particular purpose. And when the purpose is done, it is dissolved. I think, as the minister explained, the essence of this concession arrangement is just to bring in a particular investor with a management focus, with a mission to do a turnaround of ECG. And once that mission is accomplished, and both parties or both sides have gotten whatever expectations they have, there's a reversal or there's a reversion of the company, let's say to whichever entity was the previous owner. I'm just going to take opportunity, since I'm on the floor, to just ask a few things. Right. The first one is ECG a vital state entity, or is it a vital entity for that matter? I guess that answer is very simple. Obvious, yes, it is. It provides an important utility. Nobody can discount that. The second question is, has the ECG operated efficiently over the years?
No.
I think, again, that question is very easy to answer. That it has, well, forgive me, anybody who has an interest in ECG, but it's a reality we have to admit, that it hasn't been exactly efficiently run over the years. So again, that question is not too difficult to answer. Has it been efficient? And I think the political parties of either side, again, are not going to disagree on this. There are disagreements on other things, but not on this. The question, therefore, is, will privatization, which is a word that has been carefully used here, or concession arrangement, is it the best option moving forward? Will it rectify the challenges of the ECG? It may. Before I say this, let me just say that it is important that we at least commend the government to have started this discussion, because this is not exactly a comfortable discussion to have, especially in an election year.
No.
And government's job, and I think good government's job, is to take the decisions that may be unpopular, but that may be in the best interest of Ghana. It is in the light of this that I want to believe in the good sense in which the discussion has been raised, particularly in a very sensitive year like we have today. Because the reality is that all the parties have understood that the ECG hasn't been exactly doing its work over the years. Question is, has any of them been bold enough to take the bull by the horn? And I think that each of them have tried doing one thing or the other, but when it matters the most, they haven't done what they have to do. Because the reality is that virtually every Ghanaian household, has an interest of one kind or the other in the operations of the ECG, and that probably explains why they haven't been that bold in this respect. So the question is whether a concession arrangement would essentially rectify the challenges that the ECG confronts today. The Ghana Telecom example has been given.
Yeah.
And I dare say that even though indeed the Ghana Telecom privatization may appear to have, corrected some of the deficiencies in the old Ghana Telecom. Yeah. I'm talking about which is now Vodafone, has corrected some of the old deficiencies in the Ghana Telecom. I dare say that I'm not sure that everybody is exactly happy with the outcome of the current state of the Vodafone arrangement.
The Vodafone deal is still in court. Because I know
it was adjudicated upon.
Some members of the CPP went to court.
Well, that case was dead on our
because I remember that in the early years after the transformation, one of the major critique of opponents was the fact that some lines that were supposed to have been added, some private lines that were supposed to have been created, accessibility all over the country, all these promises that we thought the deal held, unfortunately, were not seen through. Not to mention the fact that today, if you ask me, I really do not see any difference between Vodafone and the other telcos. Now, that, in my opinion, was a flaw, because you must always have a competitive factor. I thought Ghana Telecom could have been used as that competitive factor. Mind you, they had more coverage in this country than any of the other existing networks. All the other networks had to fight from a position of disadvantage to the level of Ghana Telecom or Vodafone. Today, Vodafone services are as efficient as the services of the others. And I do not think that exactly is a threshold of efficiency.
But Ghana Telecom was performing as badly as ECG.
Well, that's
the bottom line.
Well, that was government, or let me say, that was public-to-public inefficiency, and we have reasons why they're inefficient. But we're talking about a public company that was privatized. The view was
partially.
Still substantially privatized.
Substantially. Yes.
So the point I'm just making, I guess, at this stage is moving forward. I think that having answered all those questions in the affirmative, it's a vital source, it's a vital resource, it is not functioning at an optimal level, it can substantially be improved. Do we need to improve, particularly in the light of the fact that this substantially undermines investment? I think that it is a bold decision, it is a courageous decision government has taken. Question is, the arrangements we're talking about, one thing we do not have to forget about is the fact that we may have to discuss questions of equity. Is there going to be equity discussions, or it's only a question of management? The special purpose vehicle, is it going to touch the very structure of of the ECG, which would imply that the very constituent act, i.e. the law that establishes public corporations, will have to be looked at in this context? Or is it going to be set up as a purely private company for all practical purposes? So I think there are some questions that I'm sure the public probably may still exactly. And that moving forward, we probably need some information on, so that the discussion can be.
I'm sure that information will be forthcoming.
Yeah, and it's part of the confusion, in fact. And just talking on equity, again, reading the MCC's website, they put a few things that the government itself need to do before the private sector guy comes in. It says, I'm just quoting, government has to invest at least $37.4 million of its own money. And the compact is expected to catalyze at least $4.6 billion in private energy investment and activity to American firms in the coming years. But it goes on to say the project includes investment to attract private sector participation, support integrated loss management, reduce distribution vulnerability to theft and meter manipulation, etc.
That's about the compact. That is
yes.
The MCC is giving us 498 million, I believe.
Yes,
there's always been.
And you need to sort of set the base, and make it attractive for the guy to come in. And the question I was going to ask with that is whether that has been done already.
Well, I think that
the base has been set.
Well, essentially,
no investment has been made.
Essentially, we are required to make some contribution. I think 37,
yes,
which is not beyond
37.4,
which is not beyond government's remit to do. The other point has to do with the number of commitments that government has to ECG. For instance, there's talk about monies that government owes ECG that it needs to make good on. Indeed, there's been a process to do that. At the last count,
repay that.
Yes, at the last count, I think the finance minister announced that about 180 million Ghana cedis had been paid to settle part of government's indebtedness.
I think you're in debt to almost 500.
Yes, million. But you see, Evans, what people are not aware that if you did a trade-off between what ECG itself owes government and what government owes ECG, ECG would actually be the one indebted. Since 1974, at least, government has been putting money in ECG with the understanding that they will pay back, which they will not be able to pay, partly because of the way that they've been set up and the way that they've operated. So they've incurred huge losses over the years. So that discussion about government's indebtedness itself ought to be placed within context. But government is committed, definitely, to paying that debt. And we started.
The workers argue. I'll come to you, Honourable. The workers argue that if you can make that payment, that payment can take them a long way in resolving all the challenges they have. So why do you want to give that? Because you expect the private sector. Why can't you give it to them now?
You need to go
so
back.
They can make it efficient.
You need to go back to appreciate how come they became so indebted in the first place. It is because of the way that they have operated. It is not only government that owes ECG. We need to put that on record as well. There are private entities that owe ECG that they simply are unable to collect.
But government is the single largest.
I agree, but I have told you about government's own money that it has invested in ECG over the years and has not gotten it back. We have guaranteed loans. We've bought them things with the understanding that they will pay us, and they owe. You see, so it's a very complex discussion, and sometimes people tend to oversimplify it by saying that if you pick $1 billion Ghana cedis and dumped it into ECG's account, all their problems will be resolved. I don't think that is that easy.
Okay.
Yes.
Honorable.
Yeah.
The starting point. Where does the MPP stand on this? Are you in favor of the arrangement government is pursuing, the concessionaire approach, or you think a different approach will best solve the problems that Kofi mentions?
Yeah. What I would say is that this is what I think, not the party's position, because the party's position has not been well communicated to me. Okay. So I will not discuss the party's position, but that's my position.
Fair.
First of all, why are we discussing privatization, whether it's concessionaire or whatever? Concessionaire is a form of privatization. Yeah. If you look at it, broader sense, it's a form of privatization. But why are we here? We are discussing this issue because of the second compact of the Millennium Challenge account.
Bottom line, true.
Bottom line. Yeah. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
There are two conditions that the country have to satisfy to access that money. One, for ECG to charge economic tariffs. And that was done in December by the introduction of new taxes and levies.
New tariffs, yeah.
Yes, that increased the tariff level. The second one is to bring in a private partner to enhance the efficiency in the operations of ECG. These are two basic conditions to satisfy the release of the second compact. So that is why we are here.
Yeah.
It's not the boldness of a government or something. It's because we need the money.
I said that without the money, government would have taken the decision.
No,
it's not entirely.
But now, this is what I know. Okay. Whether they will have done it or not, nobody knows. But this is the reality.
Okay. So it's been imposed on them. That
exactly.
No. This is an imposition.
Yes. We have to satisfy these two conditions. We satisfy the first one. We need to satisfy the second one in order to access the money. Now, there has been comparison between the privatization of part privatization of Ghana Telecom or Vodafone and this one. They are two different things. One, in the case of Vodafone or Ghana Telecom, part of the company's assets were divested, were sold. This one, no asset is being sold. Two, the operational environment of the companies are different. One is operating as a monopoly, ECG. It's a monopoly now. And the Ghana Telecom, at the time, liberalization has started in the communication sector. So it wasn't a monopoly. And that liberalization brought in its wake some huge challenges for Ghana Telecom, which required that they needed to improve upon the
remain competitive.
Exactly. Yeah. Efficiency in the company to be competitive with the other competitors. So the underlying factors are also different. So when I hear people talking about we are doing this to improve competition, it's not true. If they say they are doing it to enhance or improve efficiency in the operations of ECG, I don't have any problem.
I don't think I've heard anybody talk about competition.
We're not speaking about competition.
I've been on several platforms.
Like people say they competition.
Exactly.
Because there's no competition. I mean,
yes, exactly.
I'm surprised.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Which they've said the competition will lead to efficiency. But here, it's no issue of competition. It's purely issue of improving upon the efficiency in ECG. The first risk I see is moving from state monopoly to private monopoly for about 25 years or 30 years. which is very dangerous. We are changing state monopoly indirectly to a private monopoly in the distribution of power. In the sense that if the concessionaire comes in, they are going to take over the operations, even though that access belongs to the state or belongs to ECG. They will be operating for 25 good years.
And they must make profit.
And they have to make profit. And we don't have any other competitor. So whether they operate efficiently or not efficiently, they have to recover their money, they have to pay their people economic wages as they are talking about, and tariffs will have to go up. And that's the risk the country stands to face, which I think we have to look at it critically. Unfortunately, like other issues, we still don't have the draft agreement to interrogate it properly. It's just these pieces of information that we get, then we piece together and do analysis. So that is one risk, Felix. You people have to look at it.
Which one?
The change of state monopoly to a private monopoly for 25 good years. Because I read something, the period is between 20 and 30 years. What I saw is that it's being given for about 25 years. That's a proposal. It's, since the contract is not signed, whatever you read is a proposal. So it's a proposal. So 25 good years. We put such an important sector into a private monopoly for 25 years. So the government will have to look at this issue very carefully.
What is the risk there in handing over that monopoly to private sector?
The risk is that if the concessionaire fails to ensure efficiency in the system, to reduce its operational costs, all the costs will be passed on to us because there's no competition.
But the contract terms,
the
contract will deal with that. I mean, to spell out.
No, that is why I'm telling you now. We don't have the contract terms. You understand my point? Most of it, you see, these things we will discuss it, we interrogate it before finally you go and see the contract. If the draft contract had been out, we will be talking to the contract, and it will have informed and even shaped the final contract.
Because that time will come, Honorable. It will come. Yes,
please. But this has started a long time.
No, but there's no contract as we speak. It's not like we are drafting.
No, that's what I'm.
Secret. Yes.
No, at least they brought proposals. I've seen a proposal.
Yes, but
no, I've seen a proposal. Yes.
But the proposal is not the same as a contract. The contract.
And I've seen something on MEDA website, unless that is also not true. You see, so something has gone on.
Sure.
Some preliminary works have been done.
Sure.
And these are the things that are going to go into the contract. That's why I call it a draft. You are at the preparation stage. You see, drafts can be several until you get your final draft and approved.
No, things are far advanced.
It's far advanced.
Otherwise, we'll be very late in the day meeting the requirements.
Yes, you understand my point. So it's a draft. It's a draft contract. So we have to look at it critically. Now, how much are they going to bring on board? How much are they going to bring on board? And was it not possible, if you want efficiency, to sign a management contract?
Like a competence rent?
There's precedents that hasn't worked.
If we think that is possible.
Yeah. But that didn't work in a competence rent. So government
it didn't necessarily work in
naturally will.
Yeah.
I'm coming. You see, sometimes the reason why some of these things don't work is that if government fails to honor its obligation, now because there's pressure on the government, even to redeem the indebtedness of ECG. You know, he's going to borrow 2 billion to settle the debts of all the utility companies. It's not just because government wants to settle the indebtedness, but it's one of the conditions. So the government, in going to settle the indebtedness of ECG, will have to bring on board all the other utility companies and settle all of it. That's why government is going for the 2 billion.
Yeah.
Indebtedness, money to pay off the indebtedness of ECG. And we should not take it lightly. If government can pay this money, why can't we settle whatever indebtedness? Felix is saying that ECG owes government. All this while, ECG has come out with government indebtedness to the company. Why has government failed to come out with ECG's indebtedness?
To what end? To what end? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
indebtedness to government, so that we can know that even if you do right of set off, maybe you do set off, and know that this is the outstanding amount, maybe ECG owes government or government owes ECG, then we deal with that. But ECG keeps on coming out with how much government is owed the company. The government keeps quiet, only says ECG is also ECG also owes government.
I don't think that is the debate that we've had. You see,
No, I'm not.
I don't know whether you allow me to come in. You see,
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because you just said it.
Yes, I said it. Yes.
Yeah, that ECG owes government because government provides guarantees on facilities that ECG acquires from people, third parties. Do you understand it? And I agree if you provide a guarantee and the person fails to pay. You know, a guarantee is in the form is a liability.
Yeah, basically you pay. So we pay. Yeah.
Because if the person doesn't pay, honor the obligation, you the guarantor,
You pay.
yeah, it's your liability to pay.
And we've done that on many
Do
occasions.
you understand my point? Because the moment the facility crystallizes, definitely you are liable. You have to go and pay. So they may pay, and then ECG could be indebted to the government. Then let's know how much.
Okay.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah.
Let me hear from.
Yeah,
let me hear from
a number of issues that I need to clarify. First of all, Honorable seeks to suggest that we are doing this simply because of the compact. You see, that it would be unfortunate if that position were held.
But it's not true.
You see, that presupposes that the compact itself is something that is being shoved down our throats. It is not. It's a conscious decision that we took to access it. We could have done without it. Understand me?
You could have done without
what I'm saying is that it is possible to live without a compact.
But is it a condition of the compact?
It is a condition that merely coincides with our own.
Really?
Yes. You see,
just a coincidence.
but you see, something else. I beg your pardon, Evans. We are having a discussion about ECG's efficiency, and we all do know that various governments have toyed with the idea of doing something about ECG, except that the courage has not existed for it to be followed through.
So the compact gives the courage.
As a government, we have never been opposed to doing something about ECG. It turns out that there's a facility that will assist us greatly reform that sector of our national electricity system. And there are a few requirements that need to be done. And it is understandable because they are also bringing in money from their taxpayers. If they expect you to do a few things to ensure that the investment they are making will yield the result, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. But if government were not minded to do what has to be done to reform ECG, I don't think that we can be compelled.
The question is raising.
It is 490 million Ghana cedis. If you value the assets that we have in the entire electricity value chain, I'm sure it is way and above that. So it's not like.
I guess if I can chip in a little bit there.
Sure.
And I'm not political, so.
Sure, go ahead.
I like that.
I'm political at a certain level as a participant of this citizen participant.
Yes.
I'm not partisan political, but the point is, an honorable, and I think we have to get to a point where sometimes we have to just embrace what exists. Yeah. The MPP did fantastic things in power. The NDC is doing some good things in power. They both have done some fundamentally bad things. I think that the decision to embrace the compact and the condition could have political cost. When there's a political cost, the people who may be taking the decisions will not take it in the context of the compact. They will just say that the government has taken that decision. I think it's in the same light that when the decision appears bold and good and courageous, it's important to state it. Because ultimately, whatever they access through the compact is coming to Ghana, but they may pay the political cost. It is a consequence. So I just, and I raised that point in the light of that it's important to at least appreciate the fact that it is bold that in an election year, for a utility that virtually touches every home, government will be discussing the prospect of going into a private-public partnership arrangement, which may have political consequences. I think it's a reality. That's the context.
Another issue that I want to draw his attention to a point.
Okay.
Don't forget that when we were having serious depreciation of the local currency, the cedi, one of the sources of foreign exchange that the government came up to stabilize the cedi was funds from the second compact. That was one major source of funds. So you see, it's not like...
And that's commendable.
No, please, I'm coming.
No, which compared are you referring? The one that is supposed to...
The second one, yes. That's the one I'm talking about. About 498. And they mentioned it. So it's money they need. Please,
it's not like the money has come.
Yes. Listen. They need the money. Listen to me carefully. They need the money because it's part of the arrangement they've made, the strategies they've made to stabilize the currency.
Okay.
And other ones like the cocoa syndicated loans and all those ones, they've assessed them.
Yeah.
This is the one left to be assessed. So they have to make sure they satisfy the conditions to ensure that they assess the money to achieve whatever economic targets they set.
It's not as simple.
So it's not easy. It's not. I agree.
I think we should move on from that because also because whether it's MCC or something has been done.
Yeah.
And Kofi's point is you are doing it within the climate of an elections in 5 months.
Yeah.
So is the money worth more than staying in power?
No,
even if they're getting 500 million and then yet they are mortgaging their political.
No, you've not looked at the other side of it.
Which is?
You weigh two risks. Now, if they don't get the money and the serious depreciation starts because we are now going to a period of higher demand for foreign currency. Listen, from the end of the third quarter, entering fourth quarter. So if they don't get the money and they don't have other sources, we'll go back to what we saw previously. And that's more dangerous for them.
No,
because if we start experiencing the worst form of depreciation this country has ever experienced, again, getting to election, I'm telling you, it will be worse for them than to take this decision, stabilize the currency, and tell us tomorrow that we told you we've put plans in place to ensure that we will achieve these economic.
So for you, this is all the fundamentals about politics.
I'm telling you.
Okay.
In fact, you see, again, I'm unable to agree with Honorable's position.
So
the first quarter of this year, the city depreciated by 4.5% or so. That is a period where demand is highest. Before you come into the next stage, which is when people begin to exact demand on the system because of Christmas and its attendant festivities. So I'm not sure that this analysis is entirely correct. In any event, there is bigger money that is coming from the cocoa syndication, $2 billion. We've just mentioned the $2 billion bond that we intend to raise to amortize debts in the energy sector. In any event, let me clarify that. You recall that we introduced the energy levies, which we said was going to be used to amortize the debt in the energy sector. Over a period of about 15 to 20 years, we had accrued close to 5 billion Ghana cedis in debt, which had clogged up the credit channels for all these utilities. So something definitely needed to be done. That's why we introduced the energy levy. But the energy levy is going to come in trickles. So it is going to be invested in a fund to amortize it. So when you take this bond, you just use the proceeds to offset it. So essentially, it's the same thing that we have done. It's just that we've hastened the process by going for once. All that money will come in and we'll use it to stabilize our currency anyway. In any event, before this Eurobond came in, we've managed to stabilize our currency. It is good if it comes to show up our external reserves. But I don't think that it is fundamental to stabilizing the
Let me bring a quick
city.
one.
So I need to clarify the point. Yes. And then the bit about monopoly. You see, whether this thing is done or not, ECG will remain a monopoly. So the question of monopoly does not even arise. As we speak, there's no competing downstream.
No, but he's making a very fundamental point that you are handing a government monopoly to Paris.
But you see, that doesn't impose.
That is dangerous.
You see, that doesn't impose a danger.
It does.
What is a danger? Again, this thing is going to be done on the basis of contract.
Yeah.
The contract will have clear provisions. There are performance benchmarks. If you read the MCA contract, there are clear performance benchmarks. Until the contract is drafted, and I don't think that the contract will be a secret document. It is something that is going to become public that we would access because this process has transparency all over.
We'll take you
absolutely no problem. It has transparency all over it, so there's no way you are going to be able to hide such a contract. But to say that because it is a private sector that is managing what is a national monopoly, there are dangers in there that you cannot find if it's in public hands. It's a bit confusing.
He just alerts you so that
of course, we understand that.
Let me bring that.
Yes, but you see, fundamental to ECG's problem is the fact that they have not been able to at least break even.
Okay, let me bring
that's fundamental.
Well, we qualified for this MCC thing because of our democratic consolidation processes over the years, human rights, good governance in terms of comparative analysis. And we assessed the first one, I think, 2007 or 8. I'm not sure. And then this is the second one. We were right in going for it, as far as I'm concerned. But something that struck me quite interesting today, you know, listening to the president, and then, of course, some few points that Mr. Abuti made. The issue of courage, boldness, you know, election time, election season decisions and things. I found them quite, I agree. If it's the ECG, the impact, the scale, compared to Telecom, I think in terms of the impact, immediacy, the cost, I believe the ECG may be on a higher scale, if I'm right, even though both are important. The president talked of a risk element and the way we had dealt with things over the years. CIA will interfere with your communications. You know, you remember all those things. I remember I don't know, maybe you know, Ghanaians are capable of managing their own affairs, if you recall. You recall this? Mills list demo against GTC. This is Wednesday, 13th August 2008. Ghanaians are capable of managing Ghanaian companies. You know, ECG, if you go into an IMF document, it's titled Ghana Second Review of the First Annual Program, Request for Second Annual Program under the Poverty Reduction and Growth Facility, Request for Waiver of Performance Criteria and Exchange System. It's dated 4th August 2000 and is titled Confidential. When you come to page 8, it says Ghana prior actions, structural performance criteria and benchmarks for the Poverty Reduction Growth Facility arrangement and the completion of the first review under that arrangement. We have been trying to privatize ECG. And here, the term action, it says appoint sales advisor for the divestiture of Ghana Airways, Ghana Railways, and Electricity Company of Ghana.
This is an outright sale suggestion there.
Timing was end December 1999.
I see.
Actions taken. We actually apparently appointed a divestiture advisor, was selected for ECG. It's here, that's the action we took in 1999. I'm sure lack of courage, so we pulled back. Then you come to 2000, it says prior action, structural performance criteria and key benchmarks. Structural performance criteria, appoint sales advisor for divestiture of Electricity Company of Ghana, end September 2000, very close to elections. Again, I'm sure lack of courage, we pulled back. So I see the contest. This is a dicey issue in an election year. There's no doubt about that. The same way we played politics with GT. It was August 2008. Don't forget, it was also very close to elections. And we played on the keyboards of people's emotions relative to such sensitive areas. Ideologically, I'm the first to say I'm not very comfortable with privatization in such strategic state sectors. But I'm a realist. Having looked at the thing carefully, I think some level of private intervention is needed at this stage in the history of the ECG. That's my view. Okay. I think some level. It depends on the kind of arrangements we put in place. And so we should try and build a critical mass of that, you know, public understanding and things, and go along with this thing.
Quickly.
I am concerned about what Honorable said, in fact, what all my colleagues have said. The risk of this privatization does not lie in the necessity or otherwise, it lies in how it is actually done. Because, as he indicated, you are actually taking a public monopoly and giving it more or less into a private, giving it to a private sector or a private entity. There's a reason why we have certain areas in the public domain. These areas are high investment, returns are not very quick. These areas are, generally used. Everybody's affected by poor use, poor running or otherwise. These areas are so sensitive. If you give it to a private entity, unlike Ghana Telecom, and again, you're right. Some people can avoid it,
yes.
even if it was a monopoly.
Yes.
But for electricity, we all know.
yeah.
Sure.
So if we do not have a contract, that still keeps government in a controlling position in some ways and can call the shots.
Yeah.
Under some circumstances, you can have a private entity ripping this country up.
True.
And that's where the risk is.
There's also regulation.
We need to move on
The
to
fact that
another
the fact that
aspect.
it's been privatized doesn't mean that PULC, if it is strengthened, will lose its regulatory function. So
Not at
they
all.
will serve as a check on it.
I think people's concern was about tariffs that were
You
reflected.
see, again, on the issue of
before
time-
we read that thing,
Yes,
we'll go on.
it's
We'll go on.
back to that document.
Sure.
Of course, we don't know the final form that contract will take. This was a due diligence report. But if you don't mind, because of some of the issues we raised here,
briefly.
it says the procurement of generation is the responsibility of the concessionaire. This supposes the orderly management and organization of generation market to ensure efficiency in the terms of price setting and the development of new generation. It then comes to talk about the most important advantages of this model. We are not too sure which exact model.
Yeah.
But it says alignment between operations and investments is of control and in principle less complex than a lease, in particular with regards to the institutional framework. Greater transfer of risks to the private investor, operations, investment, and financing. Future elimination of government guarantees to PPAs after EC reaches specific financial ratios, creating considerable physical space for government of Ghana. Faster achievement of efficiency than with other options. Then it tells you the major disadvantages are the market appetite of private investors, as the concessionaire holds all the investment risks and significant investments will be required. This represents a high risk profile. Investors will particularly be concerned with regulatory stability, change in law, that's what you just hinted, and early termination provisions. Then lower quote-unquote political acceptance. It may be seen as a form of privatization, even though it is not. Well, I say it's the same thing, different.
There's some aspects of the ECG conversation that also, of course, came up this week. The workers are fighting. You know, we're talking about overbilling. A lot of us, I guess, are affected by this. And the software matter came up. Government announced this week, I think the Deputy Prime Minister, that they completed the audit. Yesterday, I was speaking to Naya Janto of the they've also done theirs, and they are conclusive that this is a software problem that needs to be fixed. They're saying that they are looking, people should look at this month's bill, should reflect the changes. And if you don't see the changes, report it. But the workers say, you know, they've gone to Parliament and said, this has nothing to do with the software. It has to do with the tariffs and the taxes you've imposed on them. And they're fighting, in fact, giving the PULC 7 days, which will expire next week Monday or so, to withdraw the directive. What's the government position?
You see, again, like I said before, whilst workers are important stakeholders, I think that we need to appreciate that there are different levels of responsibilities. There are people who have responsibility to manage the whole sector, and invariably they are empowered by law to act in a certain way. You may disagree, but you are bound by certain decisions that are taken. The first point that I wish to make is that there's no dispute that there was something definitely wrong
with the billing.
For instance, there are practical examples. I'm aware of an entity that was paying 112 Ghana cedis a month. Then, within a space of 1 month, they have brought a bill of 1,300 Ghana cedis. I mean, I don't know what sort of tariff increase could have been done that would result in this sort of quantum leap. So, and the complaints are wide and varied. Therefore, there's no dispute at all. A proper audit has been conducted. Like you said, the Deputy Minister has given indication that has been found, and going forward, we will take steps to clarify it. PULC, the regulator, have also done their own checks and come to the same conclusion. You would recall that sometime in January, after the tariffs were announced, the ECG itself came out to admit that there were discrepancies with the bill. And indeed, I am told that about 5 million Ghana cedis in reimbursement was done through the giving of credit. So I don't know why some ECG workers are still resisting what is obvious to everybody. The tariff increments are clear. They are known. You can calculate it. If you calculate it, it comes nowhere near.
Nanado says it's going to take off too much taxes you can put on it to reduce it.
Nanado has said before that he's opposed to taxes, that he came in and supported this increase. So I'm not, it is political talk. He can seek to take advantage of that. But as to whether or not, you see, as to whether or not Nanado or the MPP have the commitment to do it is another matter. But I think that this matter ought to be removed from politics. There's a genuine difficulty that is affecting everybody. Look, I was buying a certain quantity. Then it jumped.
Ghanaians are capable of managing.
You see, I was buying a certain quantity. That jumped. And that jump was not in tandem with the increase that had been done.
So, is it postpaid or prepaid?
I use prepaid, but I'm told that even postpaid customers are more affected.
More affected.
Exactly.
The PLC yesterday announced that now that they finished the audit with the postpaid, there's a next phase which is going to be an audit of the prepaid,
yes.
Which also.
So it is obvious.
I mean, Kofi, as a consumer, are you affected by this?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and because you have a business and plus you for a residential consumer, so I'm sure both ways you're hit.
No, absolutely. I think that, and I've said this, and I think it pops up somewhere in the IMF thing, which I'm not sure we discussed, but government, that joblessness, which is a major issue in this country.
Yeah.
And government is trying to create more jobs among others. And I have said government should get out of the business of creating jobs. Over the years, government have had jobs it has had to let go. So this business of trying to create jobs, government over the years have always said we'll create more jobs. It is not a business of government to create jobs. It is a business of government to create environments for jobs to grow. And I think that things like payment of too much electricity tariffs, payment of excessive taxes, these are the things that kill jobs.
You agree taxes are part of the problem with the billing?
To be honest, I haven't seen the complete breakdown of the billing.
I think 10%.
What is clear?
And then the 70.5.
What is clear? What is clear is that
Evans, there's no dispute that after the tariff adjustment, there was some increases in price. There's no dispute about it. The government has not shied away.
Exactly.
But it is not up to the quantum leaps we've seen in the bills that have come. Yes.
Right, absolutely. So I think it's in that context that we have to look at this quantum leap, to use the expression, quantum leap in the amount of monies that we pay every month. I think that a lot of people are beginning to see even the sense in going off the grid entirely.
Yeah, people are doing it. I think we could say that people have actually decided to stay in darkness, impose a certain regime of
some friends of mine, they are drivers. They 2 days in light, 3 days no light, and this is their own programming.
But it doesn't help, because what I've noticed is that even in Doomsday era, when on so many days you have no electricity, your bill comes and it's higher than it used to be. So it seems the number of days you have electricity or otherwise do not actually reflect in how much money you pay. And I think that the danger with ECG is that there's simply no option. The only option is for you to have your own power, and that's right.
Quickly on this, very, very briefly. Are you happy with the steps taken so far to rectify this problem, both from government and the PLC?
First of all, I've not seen the committee's report.
Okay.
So it will be difficult for me to say concretely that I'm happy. But let's look at the billing.
Yeah.
Seriously, there are only 2 aspects. Maybe I'll bring ECG. One is their own inefficiencies, operational inefficiencies. And then the other one, I should say, is the way they go about collecting their bills, and even the submission, collecting or not collecting their bills, and even the submission of the bills themselves. But the other aspect, if you take tax, it's not the problem of ECG. It's the government that imposed the tax. And if you say that the tax burden is not heavy, I don't agree. 2 of them are ad valorem. That's the 10% and the 17.5%. Unlike the 7 pesos, which is not dependent on another factor, but because it's a nominal figure, irrespective of the level of consumption, is the same. But when you take the 10%, the moment the base figure increases, the nominal value you are going to pay will go up. The same thing applies to the 17.5. And this problem can never be put at the doorstep of ECG. It's the government. The other aspect, the generation mix determines the level of the tariff. Now, the portion of hydro is dwindling. Let's look at the type of contracts we engage in. Let me give just one example. Ameri. When the report went to Parliament, some of the committee members said we could get it at 320. The government said, no, this is upright purchase you are talking about. And again, there are some other additions which will let the figure go beyond the 320 million US dollars you are talking about. The then minister went back to the committee and said it was about 430. million US dollars. Ultimately, we paid over 500. Do you get my point?
Yeah.
So the additional amount of about 80 million, 90 million US dollars, do you get my point, will also be factored into the determination of the tariff.
Yeah.
And this is not ECG. ECG didn't go in for that agreement. The other aspect, because some of the components are also in dollars, when the CD depreciated very fast, when you do the conversion into CD, you pay more. And the management of the CD is not ECG. The other aspect, when world price of fuel, crude, was down, even below $30 per barrel, that we expected reduction in local price of petroleum products. We rather impose taxes to increase them. So any other aspect of the generation that relies on any petroleum product for which the price was increased will also translate in the operational cost, which will ultimately reflect in the tariff.
Yeah.
And these things are not the doing of ECG, but rather the government. So you see, as much as I agree there could be problems with the billing system, the software, but over 80%, if you analyze
of the burden is coming from government.
It's coming from government,
Okay.
not ECG.
In 30 seconds, just respond to that. Let's move on.
Exchange rates and its impact on the billing. In the last 8 months, even close to a year, we've not had any significant depreciation in the value of the city. So how could it have impacted?
No, as at the time the tariffs were being cut last year.
That was in January. That was in January.
No, it was before that. It was in November, so it just took effect.
Yeah, but it took effect.
After the time it was being calculated.
But there was not such a significant drop in the value of the city. After that, this whole year, the city has lost about just 8% or so.
No, but this year, you haven't seen in the tariff.
No, but I'm saying that this, you see, the period between the time that the tariff was announced and the time that it took off, there was not that significant drop in the value of the city to warrant the sort of increases that he's speaking about. Again, the taxes that he speaks about, and I've given you a practical example of a bill. If you do the calculation and take the upper limit of what increases one can have in view of the new taxes, it comes nowhere near.
Yeah, that's true.
What we are having now. So we need to be. And again, I don't see how Ameri or any other arrangement there affects this. The Ameri matter was explained clearly.
It says the generation mix. So
absolutely,
what you do at that level,
it costs a certain amount to generate thermal power.
Yes. So if it costs us more to
exactly.
generate,
But it doesn't mean that there was any wrongdoing. Or there was any excessive cost.
It's not suggesting that.
You see, it doesn't
say that if it costs you more to generate,
but if you need
it will cost us more.
The opportunity cost of that is not generating and having deficiency in your generation capacity, which will then lead to blackouts. So we need to factor all these in.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And you're still listening and watching Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. And we'll be talking very shortly about the Commander Sugar Factory. Is it really shut? Last week I was listening to Newsfile, and a government, I think it was a deputy minister? Yeah, he was admitting that the thing had been shut, and in fact justifying that it's normal all over the world for it to be shut. But it turns out days later that it was actually operating. So where from the confusion, and who indeed is confused? We'll deal with that shortly here on Newsfile. But remember that Newsfile is always brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. MTN, welcome to the new world. Star Assurance, creating smiles since 1985. Celebrating 30 years of solid partnership. NNIT, bringing people and computers together successfully. Heavy mosquito coil. Are you a public service worker and need a loan to meet that dire financial need? Maybe you're an ECG worker. This is where you want to go. Bank of Africa. They have some good news for you. Apply for a loan from Bank of Africa and you are sure of getting your loan approved within 48 hours. Enjoy up to 5 years to repay. Get a discount on fees and ultimately start repaying the loan after 3 months. Yes, that's some good news for you. Visit any Bank of Africa branch nationwide for further enquiries. Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. If your internet could speak to you, guess what it's going to say? Imagine waiting for 4 hours just to cook instant noodles. What if it had to take you long hours only to download a short video? The wait is over. The time is now. A better internet experience is here. Switch to MTN 4G LTE and enjoy a whopping 100% bonus when you bundle. To get started, simply dial *585# to check if your device is 4G compatible, and then visit any MTN service center near you with a valid ID and make your switch today. Enjoy a better internet experience on Ghana's only 4G network on the go, and say hello to the future. MTN, welcome to the world. Star Assurance is 30 years, and through all those years, all they have been up to is to deliver solid insurance that puts endless smiles on the faces of our customers. When you walk in for a motor and travel policy, what Star Assurance does more is to brighten up your world through all your journeys. And when customers walk in for homeowners, contractors, all risk, fire and allied perils insurance policy, what Star Assurance does more is to make them feel like sad dangers don't exist in their world at all. Insure with Star Assurance today and be part of the smiling family. Star Assurance, creating smiles since 1985. Let's go. Let's celebrate 30 years of solid partnership. You can visit our website, starassurance.com, or visit any of our offices nationwide, or call us on 030-224-0632 and enjoy solid insurance all year round. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Well, mosquito coils, well, they come in different flavors and effectiveness, but the one you want to pay attention to is the one that does it all. New improved Heaven Black Mosquito Coil is now with a stronger killing formula to knock off any kind of mosquito. Even big macho mosquito cannot survive the new improved formula. New improved Heaven Black Mosquito Coil has a smoke reduction formula, therefore does not give colds, coughs and catarrh. New improved Heaven Black Mosquito Coils has a new unique sweet scented flowery perfume which give you a very pleasant experience. Insecticide spray, new improved Heaven Plus Mosquito Spray is now with a stronger killing formula against all flying and crawling insect, mosquitoes, cockroaches and ants. New improved Heaven Plus Mosquito Spray has a unique sweet scent perfume, and you can sleep in the room immediately after spraying. Having insecticides gentle and pleasant on humans and a touch and a tough nightmare on insects. Having insecticides kum tuntum preko. Well, protect your family against malaria with having mosquito coils and insecticide spray. NIIT, your number one choice in IT education for over 15 years in Ghana, is offering new and exciting programs this year. Experience the best of computer education in a serene learning environment with qualified IT professionals. Are offering include certificate and diploma courses in software engineering, Android programming, PHP, web development, Java programming, hardware and networking, Cisco, Oracle database, and a lot more. Our programs are relevant to today's job market. For corporate institutions, we invite you to take advantage of our special corporate packages. Good news to SHS and JHS candidates. NIT is offering 20% discount on selected programs. Be better prepared for the next level. For more information, visit our website. It's niitghana.com, or call us on 028-9674-770. And our well-trained academic counselors will assist you to choose the right program, bringing people, computers together successfully. When we return from the break, we'll read some of your comments and then we'll continue with this very important conversation about the Commander Sugar Factory. Is it shut or is it open?